Hasbro Incorporated, run by the Hassenfeld family, is most well known for manufacturing toys, with Mr. Potato Head, G.I. Joe, Monopoly, Scrabble and Barney being some of the most reputable products in Hasbro's inventory. In 1979, Hasbro became one of America's fastest growing companies, leading the toy industry to be dominated by two companies, Hasbro and Mattel. In 1995, under Alan Hassenfeld's leadership, Hasbro decided to enter the interactive gaming market with the belief that the personal computer was to be the future of gaming. As such, Hasbro set up a subsidiary known as Hasbro Interactive, headed by Tom Dusenberry. In the beginning, Hasbro Interactive's performance was extremely promising, with revenues doubling from 1996 to 1997. There were high hopes for the division and challenging targets were set as a result. However, over the following years, Hasbro Interactive ran into a number of hurdles in their operations which were not dealt with effectively, leading to underperformance of the division. The three most pertinent problems that led to Hasbro Interactive's underperformance were decision-making problems, communication problems, and motivation problems.
One of the issues contributing to the downfall of Hasbro Interactive was the lack of strategic decision-making. Strategic decisions direct important firm-level actions, set precedents, and require commitment of financial resources. As such, strategic decision-making is an important pillar underlying organizational success as it shapes the course and direction of the firm. Both demographic and psychometric variables influence strategic decision-making by top management teams. Decision-making processes of cognitively diverse management teams are characterized by little brainstorming, consideration of only a narrow range of alternatives, and limited use of quantitative analysis. Moreover, cognitive style influences the level of aggression, tolerance of ambiguity, and the level of risk assessment in decision-making processes. Personality and the propensity for risk-taking also influences decisions. We will now look at Tom Dusenberry and Alan Hassenfeld through a traits lens. Using the Big Five personality model to assess Dusenberry's personality, we can see that he is very ambitious and an inspiration to his team. However, whilst Dusenberry is able to inspire his team to think creatively, his extroverted nature is likely to lead to more risky and impulsive decisions. Tom also exhibits low levels of conscientiousness. He has a propensity to focus on many projects at the same time, often changing focus and making rash decisions. This is evidenced by Dusenberry leading the acquisition of several companies and securing licensing deals in 1999 in an effort to achieve ambitious revenue targets. Mergers and acquisitions are characterized by very high operating costs, and it is unclear whether Mr. Dusenberry had an intimate understanding of the financial implications of his acquisition decisions. Furthermore, Mr. Dusenberry displays a high level of openness to experience, where he is imaginative and creative. Whilst Dusenberry is valued for being a visionary, people who have high levels of openness to experience also tend to lead groups in independent directions and are less likely to accept leadership from above. As evidenced by the case, Dusenberry steers Hasbro Interactive in an independent direction, with almost no liaison with Hasbro. In addition, Dusenberry disliked interference from corporate management in regards to the operations at Hasbro Interactive. He was dismayed when Mr. Verrecchia reduced Hasbro Interactive's revenue goal from $1 billion to $300 million. Dusenberry displays high levels of self-efficacy in which he feels a personal sense of empowerment that he can take actions to enable him to achieve his personal goals. Dusenberry also exhibits an internal locus of control. He believes that his destiny is in his hands and it is his goal to ultimately take the position of CEO. Mr. Dusenberry's judgment as a decision-maker may also have been affected by an anchoring and adjustment heuristic, which affected his ability to accurately forecast costs. As such, revisions in financial projections were made, project deadlines were missed, and projects exceeded initial cost projections. In addition, Dusenberry's decisions were influenced by confirmation bias, where he avoided disconfirming information. This was seen when he exhibited unethical decision-making, wanting to capitalize software development expenditures in the hopes of mitigating the loss stemming from the division. He sought to frame the loss as an investment to validate his previous decisions. In contrast, Mr. Hassenfeld exhibits high levels of agreeableness. He is cooperative and trusting, which is seen when he places Tom Dusenberry in charge of establishing Hasbro Interactive. Despite Mr. Dusenberry's lack of experience in general management, Mr. Hassenfeld gave him complete autonomy in building the division. It is uncertain whether Mr. Hassenfeld acted solely on intuition when he decided to put Mr. Dusenberry in charge, consulting only with Dave Wilson, the head of Hasbro's game division. Following a failed attempt at diversifying Hasbro's portfolio into electronic games previously, Mr. Hassenfeld's decision to enter interactive gaming was a risky one. With a high openness to experience, he admired creativity and innovation. However, it is unclear whether Mr. Hassenfeld fully considered the risks and costs involved in setting up Hasbro Interactive. Mr. Hassenfeld was also influenced by an escalation of commitment. After deciding to invest in an ambitious project to develop a leading-edge microprocessor, he continued to support the project despite huge sunk costs. In terms of the social context, Hasbro struggled to coordinate nearly 10 independent business units, and as such, strategic planning, budgeting, and business performance reviews suffered. To drive organic growth, parent company Hasbro rolled out more aggressive revenue targets for each division. After Mr. Baum introduced standard reporting metrics for all divisions, there was an increased sense of competitiveness and greed. As resources were now limited, division heads, including Mr. Dusenberry, were forced to make decisions that were in the best interests of their division and lost focus on the vision, strategy, and goals of Hasbro as a whole. The environmental context is also a factor that influences decision-making. Hasbro as a whole was a dynamic environment with highly unpredictable and unstable rates of change. This is partly a byproduct of the immense organizational change that stemmed from spanning into the interactive world, as well as the large number of acquisitions the company made in a short space of time. Dynamic environments can lead to increased aggressive competitiveness and can result in reduced performance if the firm is unable to respond to the rapidly changing environment. In addition, managers have to engage in multiple cognitive activities simultaneously, which strains cognitive functioning.
Effective communication is a critical ability that organisational leaders must master in order to foster high-performing teams. It is the impetus of leaders such as Tom Dusenberry to manage and control the flow of information throughout the business unit. From the perspective of managerial psychology, the organisation is the mechanism used to disseminate the exact information to the specific individual or individuals that is required to enact the firm's unique objectives. As such, Tom Dusenberry can be seen as the gatekeeper of the formal and informal information flows within Hasbro Interactive. Hasbro Interactive was plagued by its inability to effectively communicate and consult with Hasbro's established business units. This isolation or separation from Hasbro was enhanced by an exclusive reporting structure in which Tom Dusenberry reported to Hasbro's vice chair, Sonny Gordon, and to a lesser extent, Alan Hassenfeld and John O'Neill. These meetings excluded the input of divisional heads of Hasbro's established business units, thereby severely reducing the access of Hasbro Interactive employees to external information flows. In light of this, it is possible to identify and diagnose the critical incidents that exhibit signs of defective communication. In 1999, Hasbro Interactive instigated a monopoly promotion with Burger King. This was in clear conflict with Hasbro's established monopoly promotion with McDonald's, an ill-considered and ignorant misstep on the part of Hasbro Interactive. Consequently, the senior management team lost confidence and an attitude formed that Hasbro Interactive required strict oversight from the established business units at Hasbro. Jane Ritson Parsons, President, Hasbro Property Group, Hasbro Incorporated, encapsulates the disconnects between Hasbro Interactive and Hasbro's core business units. We have personnel at Hasbro Interactive. They do not feel the need to consult with us because they believe that they know what is going on with the brand. But they can't do the research that we do, and they don't have the consumer insights that we use to manage our business. Moreover, Jackie Dyer, Senior Vice President Corporate Finance, was able to diagnose the defective communication practices afflicting Hasbro Interactive within her first few days working with the division. Ms. Dyer identified the difficulty facing Hasbro Interactive managers in obtaining the necessary information concerning inventory and the total amount of commitments to outside product developers. There were significant delays in the transfer of contract information from paper to the financial system, leading to the missing of important deadlines and the exceeding of initial cost projections on several products. It was clear to Ms. Dyer that an overhaul of this communication system was desperately needed. Communication perceived through the trait lens. In his former position as president of Hasbro Interactive, Tom Dusenberry's extroverted personality translated into a communication style that was highly persuasive, effusive, exciting, and assuring. Dusenberry exhibits personality traits of an extrovert: assertiveness, gregariousness, enthusiasm, and optimism. The overly ambitious targets set by Hasbro Interactive, which appeared unattainable and/or overly ambitious, were communicated by the extroverted Dusenberry in a manner that enabled others to accept unsound information. Communication perceived through the social lens. It is likely that Dusenberry's personal magnetism and charismatic energy, his powerful ability to engage those around him, his obvious and infectious excitement about Hasbro Interactive's potential led to a situation in which a strong interpersonal liking and admiration for their leader prevented other employees from questioning and challenging Dusenberry. Upon reflecting with the privilege of hindsight, the newly appointed president and CEO, Al Verrecchia, encapsulated the charismatic power wielded by Dusenberry. I think the way we went about it was emotional rather than strategic. I do not think we really sat down and tried to put together a plan. Tom promoted it, and he got the support that he needed. Communication perceived through the cognitive lens. The common information effect is a psychological phenomenon that may account for a high proportion of the informational deficiencies impacting the efficacy of communication in this case. This theory dictates that information processed by a high proportion of team members carries more influence over team decision-making than information possessed by a small proportion of team members. Teams, such as Hasbro Interactive, tend to spend too little time discussing unshared information, such as pre-established promotion commitments. In psychology, confirmation bias is the term used to denote the seeking or interpreting of evidence in ways that are partial to existing beliefs, expectations, or a hypothesis in hand. After closing the books for 1999, Hasbro Interactive had lost $74 million on $237 million in revenues. Al Verrecchia and Herb Baum received the same information but reacted very differently. This is due to their innate impetus to confirm their pre-existing beliefs and/or attitudes towards Hasbro Interactive. Baum's belief in Dusenberry meant that he was willingly persuaded to interpret this information as an investment in the company's future. Al Verrecchia, on the other hand, the key skeptic of Hasbro Interactive, was alternatively wired to interpret this information as a loss and a key indication of the division's defectiveness.
Another problem that faced Hasbro was the level of motivation displayed by employees. Motivation is defined as the phenomena in operation of internal drive. It directly influences the amount of effort, direction of effort, and the level of persistence executed towards a specific effort. Performance at work is therefore largely dictated by the amount of motivation an employee has to perform, combined with their abilities. In the lead up to the launch of Games.com at Hasbro employees that were interested in transferring to the new business unit were noted to be agog with visions of personal wealth, with the CEO, Mr. Hassenfeld, commenting that greed became the mentality amongst workers and that it was very disconcerting to watch. In this instance, it is evident that Hasbro employees were motivated extrinsically by what type of options packages they would receive upon employment in the new business division. There was no mention of intrinsic motivating factors, such as the interesting work they could be undertaking, the opportunity of advancement, or the sense of personal achievement for being part of an exciting new venture. According to Herzberg's two-factor theory, the problem with employees being solely motivated extrinsically by hygiene factors, such as salary and other benefits, is that while leading to the prevention of dissatisfaction with a job, they will not act as motivators, leading to average employee performance. To be motivated to perform and have high satisfaction with your job, Herzberg stated that intrinsic motivator factors, such as the want to do stimulating work, the goal of achievement, and the sense of personal responsibility must be present, in conjunction with hygiene motivating factors, to lead to high motivation and commitment to work. The absence of intrinsic motivation, or motivator factors, amongst Hasbro employees contributed to a workforce that was not entirely satisfied with their jobs, leading to lower motivation and persistence to perform to the best of their abilities. Furthermore, this lack of intrinsic motivation meant that Hasbro employees displayed low levels of loyalty to Hasbro, being tempted by any workplace that offered a better salary package, resulting in high employee turnover during the more tumultuous times. As a consequence, talented employees such as Meg Whitman were lost to companies with more lucrative packages. How motivation issues came about, social context. Previously, Hasbro employees had been rewarded with generous bonuses such as new cars upon good performance. According to organismic integration theory, a sub-theory of self-determination theory, these actions sanctioned by Mr. Hassenfeld created an organizational culture in which employees displayed motivating behaviors that were externally regulated. The implication of having employees that display externally regulated motivating behaviors is that they simply perform behaviors to satisfy an external reward contingency and view their behavior to be controlled with an external perceived locus of causality. This in turn has the implication of undermining employees' intrinsic motivation to perform tasks, having a detrimental effect on overall employee motivation and performance. This phenomenon was particularly pertinent when employees were focused on what sort of packages they would be getting upon taking a position. How motivation issues came about, people. CEO Mr. Hassenfeld ultimately dictates what kind of performance management systems will be in place to motivate employees. As mentioned previously, Hassenfeld can be classified as high in agreeableness according to the Big Five personality trait theory. Being high in agreeableness meant that Mr. Hassenfeld has a low propensity to disagree and is less capable of initiating structure. When reflecting on Hasbro's more troublesome times, Hassenfeld commented that, "At the end of the day, it was my fault, because I was watching over the whole thing. People began approving things that would have never been approved." It is clear that Hassenfeld became worried about the extent to which employees became motivated by greed. However, it was unlikely that Hassenfeld would have said something to voice his concern in an effort to avoid conflict. His agreeableness meant that the issue with the greed-orientated culture was not dealt with and was left to ruminate and prevail the Hasbro workplace.
In order to make decisions that are aligned with organizational objectives and strategy, top management needs to have a clear understanding of Hasbro's strategic priorities. Hasbro suffers from organizational centrality, in which Tom Dusenberry holds an enormous amount of power in terms of decision-making. In addition, Mr. Dusenberry's complete autonomy resulted in him having little accountability for the decisions he made. As such, the management team should not entrust a single individual with making decisions that affect the strategic direction of Hasbro. Policies should be instituted that require top management teams and division heads to be involved in strategic decision-making processes. Hasbro may also benefit from instituting a dialectical inquiry structure for decision-making. This involves a structured, logical, and analytical method for analyzing decision alternatives. This technique would be beneficial at Hasbro, as it would require thorough analysis of data and review the financial implications of major decisions. This, along with policies ensuring the broad management team were involved in major decisions, might have prevented downfall at Hasbro Interactive.
Recommendations for the communication problem. Enforce consultation with divisional heads. Before rolling out new ventures, such as the ill-considered monopoly promotion with Burger King, it should be mandated that the individual leading the venture be seen to properly consult with all divisional heads. Through such consultation, the Burger King debacle would most likely have been stopped in its tracks through the intervention of licensing expert Jane Ritson Parsons. It is also advisable that these meetings of divisional heads are held on a recurring basis as a further means of reducing informational deficiencies. Establish a knowledge-sharing culture. Increasing transparency could reduce the informational deficiencies that precluded Hasbro Interactive from experiencing effective communication. An internal intranet system could be used as a widely accessible portal of communication. Financial reports and other important policy documents could be shared on this portal. Knowledge-sharing cultures have been linked within the psychological research to optimised innovation, creativity, and performance. Policy implementation. In light of the Hasbro Interactive debacle, it is highly recommended that a policy be set in place to ensure that the decisions made by leaders are critically evaluated by a group of individuals. All proposed decisions should be challenged, questioned, and debated within regular division meetings.
Recommendations for motivation problem. According to cognitive evaluation theory, to increase employees' intrinsic motivation, Mr. Hassenfeld and his senior management team must create a social environment that facilitates intrinsic motivation in employees. It is suggested that rather than having a performance management system that is focused around rewards, a factor found to undermine intrinsic motivation, which is currently in place at Hasbro. The system should implement social events that facilitate competence, autonomy, and relatedness in employees. Some suggestions include regular effectiveness promoting feedback from Hasbro managers. This feedback should be more positive rather than negative in nature, suggesting areas of potential improvement for employees. Regular meetings should also be held with work teams to demonstrate how their work is contributing to organisational goals of Hasbro. Additionally, employees should set their own enabling goals to motivate themselves to achieve certain tasks. In regards to rewards, they should be used synergistically with intrinsic motivators to complement and enhance Hasbro employees' intrinsic motivation. Employees should therefore not expect such reinforcements. Rather, senior management should disseminate rewards in more spontaneous intervals to decrease employees' expectancy of external rewards.